Let's talk about transfers. We'll come back on the striker options later on, but I want to talk about let's forget about goalkeeper situation. I feel like we've talked that to death. But you mentioned centre backs. We are now linked, and I think I asked you on WhatsApp, and we spoke about it sort of through our Twitter page as well around Trevoh Chalobah. I did a video earlier this week about that on our channel. If you haven't, make sure you watch that. But Trevoh Chalobah, for me, if I was him, I'd be on my phone to my agent saying, you know what, if they ask me to come back, I'll go back, but start looking for a club for me from now. Because what's your thoughts on us even attempting to recall Trevoh Chalobah from Crystal Palace due to the injury crisis that we've got at centre-back?
It's the way we treated him is so disrespectful, in my opinion. If I were Trevoh Chalobah, why would I want to go back to Chelsea? The club that omitted you from their pre-season tour, that made you train with their reserves alongside Conor Gallagher until you could find a club to go to. And then when you realised that there were no potential suitors, you were shipped out on loan on deadline day at midnight to Crystal Palace. I think like the way we treated him has been really, really disrespectful. And I don't see why he would want to come back to a club that treated him that way. I know that he's been through the academy. He's a boyhood Chelsea fan, so I'm sure maybe deep down he might want he's got unfinished business there. But yeah, then I also look on paper. Is he better than Tosin right now based on form? Yes. Is he better than Disasi? Yes. Is he able to get on the pitch unlike Bajashir and Profana? Yes. Is he a good partner for Levi Colwill? Yes, we saw that last season when he was kind of brought back into the fold around February time. So I think it's an option, but also I'd be kind of like head in hands thinking like, this is the state of our club right now. We're calling players from loans that we were trying to desperately sell to raise money, and now we're realizing we've got no options. We were calling him. So yeah, then I'm also hearing we're going to try to recall him and maybe use him as like a make weight to get Marc Guéhi.
Yeah.
Who's, I think we have like a first say, given we have like some kind of clause, I think in his contract that allows us to maybe get him for 55 million, I believe. But yeah, I think centre-back is something we need to look at. I feel like we had a lot of options at the start of the season, and all of a sudden now we look quite fragile and weak in that position. So yeah, I don't know. I'm keen to hear what you think about the Chalobah Guéhi kind of Palace connection and situation.
I think, like I said, look, I mean, we need a centre-back. We know that 100%. We need someone that can come in. He knows the team. He knows the squad. It's not like he's going to need to adapt or understand what Maresca's going to want from him. You know, he's worked with Levi Colwill before as a centre-back partnership. I just think from a player perspective, and because of how, like you said, how we treated him, if I was him, I'd be trying so hard not to come back. You know, he's playing really well for Palace. I think he's got 3 goals this season, I think. He's been playing regular football, which is what he wanted at Chelsea. But from a Chelsea perspective, we do need a centre-back, and he's a very good centre-back. No Chelsea fan, or the majority of Chelsea fans, didn't want him to go in the first place. We wanted him to stay at the club. So from a Chelsea perspective, of course, you want him back because he's a good centre-back. My worry is that when we get to the end of the summer, the first thing we're going to want to try and do is bring in another centre-back. What happens to Trevoh Chalobah then? He's probably going to get sold for pure profit. So, look, I mean, from a Chelsea perspective, it makes sense to bring him back. He's still our player. He's still contracted to us. You know, we need some defensive stability in that back line. And he is experienced. We forget how long he's been in the first team for. You know, he's more experienced, I'd say, in terms of what Chelsea need than Disasi, Wesley Fofana and Badiashile. You know, he's got the experience. He's played at the top level for us. So for me, it's a no-brainer to recall him. We've also got Alfie Gilchrist, who is at Sheffield United, another player that we could bring back as well. I don't think we're going to be doing that. As you said, Anselmino has come back from Boca Juniors, but I think he'll be spending the rest of the time climatising to, you know, English football and understanding how the development squad will work first of all, then we'll probably integrate him next season. So, but with Marc Guéhi, I think it's tough because he plays left centre back, doesn't he, for Palace, which is what Levi Colwill is for us essentially. He is right-footed, so he could easily play right centre back. But I think again, if we're going to spend money on a defender, I want someone who's not Virgil van Dijk, of course we can't get him, but someone who's got the experience. We spoke about Matt Hummels in the summer. You know, go and get someone that's got the experience, who's a bit older, another Thiago Silva that is coming nearer to the end of their career, who, do you know what I mean? I want someone who's going to be able to do that rather than we go out and buy Marc Guéhi, who isn't the answer. He just isn't the answer for the price we're going to, for 50 odd million. Go and find someone that's got the experience at the top level, in my opinion anyway.
Yeah. It's weird now that sure football's changed in a way that you consider someone like Marc Guéhi, who's been in the Premier League for 3 or 4 years as an experienced player. That's what kind of like the recruitment team look at, because I was in agreement. I was in the summer. I even wanted Delete before he was linked to Manchester United. But now it's the type of profile of player I was looking at. But I think it's becoming more and more evident now that this Blue Coat kind of ownership after that disastrous summer window where they signed Koulibaly, Aubameyang, Raheem Sterling, and so on, that they now want to target these younger players from leagues abroad, bringing them in, foster their development and then integrate them into the team if needed. That's probably what we were looking to do now with Estevao Willian, Kendry Paez, Andre Santos. So I like Marc Guéhi. I do think, we have to remember he was a Chelsea player as well.
Yeah.
Up until summer 2021 or 2022, I think.
And we was all gutted when he left as well. Remember, we didn't want him to go at the time. Yeah.
We were really gutted, that I think he made his debut for Palace against Chelsea. And I remember thinking, like, what could have been when I was watching him at Stamford Bridge. And really, really talented player. I remember he went on loan to Swansea and did really, really well there. Yeah. Was really comfortable at the Euros as well this summer.
He was probably the best centre-back at the Euros 3 was.
Yeah. Really impressive. I think he was performing a lot better than Walker and Stones and other players. So I wouldn't mind Guéhi, but it just seems like we're so desperate right now that we're trying to recall players, sign ex-players back. It just seems like we don't really have a plan B in a way, and it's going to be a massive throwback to what we tried to recall Emerson from his was it Lyon when we had Lyon, yeah, and we had I think Alonso and Chilwell out injured. No, I think we just had. I think there was something in his contract that wouldn't let us get him back. So we had to settle, I think, with Kennedy coming back from his loan. So that's what I kind of feel like happened with Anselmino. It's like we panicked and we just recalled this guy. We did the same with Casadei last January.
Yeah.
So, and then look at Casadei's situation now. He's not really in the fold at all. We're looking to sell him. So.
Last one on, there is Tomori, who we've been linked with as well, ex-Chelsea again. So we'll have to see where we go with that one. But you did mention Cesare Casadei, who I think things have come to a bit of a stalemate with Napoli at the moment. Originally, I think we reported this week earlier on that he was expected to make a move to Torino, which I think was in the region of 10 to 12 million. But I think Chelsea are hoping to get 15 to 17 million for Casadei. Napoli, I think, came in a couple of days ago or even yesterday. But things have slowly calmed down with him. Now, it looks like he's certain to leave the club in January. It just depends on where he's going to go. Carney Chukwuemeka as well, which we'll get onto. But Casadei, another one that hasn't really been given an opportunity in the first squad. Got recalled from Leicester, played in the Conference League. But we've always said he's a good player. He's a good squad player to have in the team. But it seems like the three, in terms of Carney Chukwuemeka, Casadei and Dewsbury-Hall, will be potentially leaving the club in the winter window. Do you think that's the right call from Chelsea?
These players aren't getting minutes, and I think especially Chukwuemeka, and I'll add a fourth one into that list, Ben Chilwell. They're on big money. They're on big wages as well.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if Chelsea want to just get them off the books if they're not playing football. Casadei, I guess it makes sense. He's a bit of a squad player, sporadic player. I don't think his move to Napoli will materialise now that Napoli have signed Philip Billing on loan from Bournemouth.
Yes.
So I think Torino, Monza, even read, I think a Dutch club in Feyenoord wanted his signature. So that's one to take a look at. And it's interesting because he's a type of player that should have maybe played tomorrow against them.
Yes.
Yeah. So if he's not in the squad, it's very telling of where his future lies. Dewsbury-Hall, another one that's a bit of a surprise. Like, why did we sign this guy if we're just going to sell him in January? It just seems a bit of a confusing one that he's being linked back to Leicester, to West Ham. The one I'm really gutted, that was Chukwuemeka. I was going to say, I think massive talent. He just doesn't really seem to fit in Maresca's plans, or potentially again, it's the ownership telling Maresca, we need to get this guy off the wage book. He's on, I think, 170,000 a week.
Yeah, so
but he's on big money. Yeah, he's being linked to Dortmund, which I think would be a fantastic kind of acquisition from British Parliament.
Like a good English midfielder day later.
my one worry is like we saw it. It's they get these players on loan like Sancho, like Ian Maatsen, and then they don't really have the financial power afterwards to get them, and they.
Yeah.
Actually, they should. They're still, surely they've got Haaland and Bellingham money just sitting there. Surely.
Yeah, and they're selling, I think, Marlon now to Brugge, to Aston Villa. I think that'll be like maybe a 6-month loan, and we'll see him back at Cobham in the summer if he does go. But yeah, 4 players definitely, I think, ones to keep an eye on this January. There's also talks of Christopher Nkunku on leaving the club,
PSG
to Paris, PSG. I don't know. I think the one that surprised a lot of people yesterday was, need to pronounce this correctly, Kavisha
Masrinia.
It kind of, yeah, that's the one. Georgian winger at Napoli. He's being linked to Chelsea now, alongside Liverpool and Paris. So that's another one potentially to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I'd love him. But I mean, before we get on to him, I mean, I liked him at the Euros. I thought he was brilliant. But Kobbie Mainoo, let's quickly talk. Let's talk about. I mean, that story came out of nowhere. I thought it was a bit of rubbish at the first, and then I saw Fabrizio Romano started, growing some legs to it. That David Ornstein added some further legs and feet to it, and then suddenly it grew. I don't know where I sit with this one. I mean, we just spoke about the midfield options, Dewsbury-Hall, Guéhi and Chalobah, Casadei potentially leaving the club. So yes, we're going to need midfield cover there. We know that Lavia's not really been able to keep himself fully fit for the best part of 2 seasons now since he signed for us. So Kobbie Mainoo is one that I just did not have on our bingo card. It just wasn't on the radar. What's your thoughts on Kobbie? He's a good player. He had a really good, decent enough Euros, but I think for the fee we're going to have to pay for him, I just don't see why we wouldn't look at some of the players we've already got out on loan first before we sign another midfielder.
Yeah, I mean, I know this is a Chelsea podcast, but from a Manchester United perspective, it makes sense now because they've signed, and they just have a
pure profit as well.
You look at their 2 biggest sellable assets, and that's Kobbie Mainoo and Alejandro Garnacho.
Marcus Rashford.
I mean, why? I wouldn't even call him sellable right now, given their form, but I think they might be lucky to get, 30 or 40 million for him. But I think Garnacho and Mainoo are probably the ones that would get them over 60, 70 million potentially.
Yeah.
I like Mainoo a lot. I think he's a really talented player. I watched him in the FA Cup final last season, and he kind of stole the show. He's only got about a year of Premier League football under his belt, but the fact we're already considering a really talented player says a lot about his ability. I really like the look of him at the Euros in England as well. I think he made his debut at the Euros, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
in the
warm-up games, the pre-games, yeah.
Yeah. But I completely agree with what you just said. If we've got the option to look at guys like Andre Santos, who's having a really good season again at Strasbourg on loan, and who's, I think a lot of clubs are ready to pinch his signature if we don't want to kind of keep hold of him. I think that's what we should be looking at now. It's like the players we have on loan. We spoke about Petrovic as a goalkeeper option a few weeks ago, and we dismissed it quite quickly. Now we need to look at Estevao Willian. We need to look at Andre Santos. We need to look at Alfie Gilchrist. We need to look at Adsamino, these type of guys. Before we just off Nkunku as well, yeah. Broja, guy, I think after his injury yesterday, I think we'll be lucky to see him kick up football again in 2025. But I think before we start throwing money at a load of clubs to start get players' signatures, we should look at our loan options there.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I like Mainoo. I think he's a good midfield option. I just think again, are we just helping United? They've got to clear 200 million debt by the summer. They look at their prized assets, like you said, Garnacho, Kobbie Mainoo, Rashford. I'm sure will go to AC Milan, and there'll be some sort of fee involved there, whether it's a loan with obligation. But I just think, like you said, I like Nkunku. I think I would consider recalling him now at this precise moment to just give us some cover in midfield, especially if we lose Casadei, we lose Guéhi and Chalobah. We need some extra depth in that midfield. You look at Andre Santos, who's having a brilliant time in Strasbourg. The good thing about Mainoo, I think his deal runs till 2027. So if we don't come in for him now, we come in for him in the summer. There's going to be 12 months left, or just over 12 months left on his contract. We might be able to reduce that fee down a little bit. Obviously I think his agent is clearly either looking to extend that for a contract at United for, I think, £200,000 a week, or he wants the move to Chelsea or somewhere else. But one to definitely keep an eye on, 100%. Let's talk about Nkunku, and let's talk about our attacking options as well going forward. I feel sorry for Nkunku. I really do. I think Christopher Nkunku for me is a player that we should have been able to at least incorporate into the team to some aspect, whether that's as the 10 and we move Cole Palmer to the right, or we give him the opportunity like we have for that. I think there's times where we're afraid to take Cole Palmer off the pitch, and when he's having probably not his best game, we keep him on too long. And I think sometimes if he's not effective, we should be taking him off. No one's unsubbable, if that's even a word, but he should be coming off. And I think Nkunku should have been given a lot more time. And looks like we might be losing him in this window. He's annoyed at the lack of minutes he's got. What's your thoughts on Nkunku potentially going to PSG, potentially moving to another club in Europe? A lot of talent to potentially leave Cobham.
It's a shame. It's a rotten known shame because we signed him last summer and he was like our marquee signing, and a lot of people that watch Bundesliga, that watch French football, are telling me that we're getting a massive player, massive talent. Missed pretty much that whole season last year of injury, and then we just signed all these attacking players. We shifted Palmer to the 10 from his wing position this season under Maresca, and that's really limited Nkunku's minutes this season. I don't think he's done himself much favours when he's come on in the Premier League. He's looked quite unmotivated and not very, his off the ball kind of performances or have not been kind of motivating. I think it was against Fulham when he came on as a late substitute. He just looked like he was just jogging on the pitch and wasn't really motivated. But he's a really good player. We've seen what he's capable of doing at times, even the back end of last season when he scored against Brighton and the goal he scored against Bournemouth earlier in the season. He's a good player, and but I just feel like right now that what we're doing, the kind of the profile of players that Maresca's looking at and the setup and the lineup and the formation, I just don't see how he gets into these teams. And like you said, I just feel like we need to be a bit braver and take Palmer off if he's not performing. Put Nkunku as the 10, have Marc Weaven as the striker, and Jackson as the striker. And I think the best of Christopher Nkunku I've seen is when he's played with Jackson and they bounced off of each other and have created that link up, which we saw very briefly in I think some pre-season games in 2023. But since then, it's just been really, really we haven't really seen it much because it's either been Palmer and Jackson or Nkunku and João Felix in the Conference League, but never Jackson and Nkunku. So that's why I'd really like to see maybe one game where we go with Nkunku, Jackson and Palmer, the three of them kind of playing together. But yeah, I would not be surprised if he's talking to his agent now saying like, listen, get me a move away this January or in the summer because I don't see where I play football at Chelsea or where my minutes are going to come from.
No, I'd agree. And we've got to remember there's a World Cup coming up in the next couple of, year or so. Some of these players that need to be playing week in, week out just to make sure, I think Didier Deschamps, I think he's leaving the French national squad as well at the end of the World Cup. So, he's going to want to try and be in that squad at least to try and win the World Cup for France. But yeah, I agree. I think he's definitely a talent. We've seen it in the Conference League, albeit with lesser opposition that he's playing against, but he's definitely got something about him. And we wouldn't have signed him if we didn't think he had the quality and the ability to that doesn't say much. We signed Keane and Dewsbury-Hall as well. But in terms of Nkunku, we know what he brings to the team. It's just annoying that we haven't really, a bit like Carney Chukwuemeka, we haven't really seen them play as much regular football as we thought they would. And maybe that's the only downside to that. But it could be a loan. We might see him back at Chelsea. We never know. So fingers crossed we do get to keep Nkunku. But before we wrap up on the transfer areas, we did sort of touch on it at the start about the strikers. But if you had to choose one out of this, my top three was Alexander Isak, Victor Gyökeres and Victor Osimhen as my three in the video that I put out yesterday. If you had to pick one of those, which one would you pick out of those three if we go into the market to sign a striker?
I'll put it quite simply. I think Isak, by what Newcastle are demanding, will be 120 million, which is way too much. Osimhen, I kind of didn't like the way he handled things in the summer, asking for too much money. Then he was forced to kind of settle with Turkish Super League football with Galatasaray. Whereas I just read yesterday that Sporting would consider selling Gyökeres, I think, for 70-something million this summer, which for me is reasonable money in today's market for what was the leading goal scorer across all leagues in 2024. So yeah, the answer is Victor Gyökeres for me. And I've actually seen this guy play in the flesh a few times when I've been to Lisbon. he's impressive, really, really impressive. He went for a bit of form when he played under Joao Pereira, who took over from Amorim. But now that I think Costa, the new manager, Rui Pereira has come in, he's scored the first goal of 2025, and I think he got a couple more against Vitória Guimarães in their recent fixture, and I think he's even scored in the cup against Porto. Yeah. So this guy just knows how to find the back of the net, and that's what we need. So that's just Victor Gyökeres for me.
He was my first option, I think, yesterday, if I remember correctly. I think I had him. I think I had Isak second and Osimhen third. Osimhen purely just because of, like you said, how he handled things in the summer, and I just think with Isak, he's got that Premier League experience already, so you know what you're kind of getting from him. You know, he's going to be able to fit into our team, but we have to see. I do think we need a striker, though. As we said, I think we need to get a striker, and whether that's now, whether we try and get the break clause done with Osimhen, listen, we need a striker. We can't just rely on Nicholas Jackson. But